JonBenét Patricia Ramsey was born on August 6, 1990, in Atlanta, Georgia, into a family that appeared outwardly successful and loving. Her parents, John and Patsy Ramsey, were well known in professional and social circles, John as a high-level business executive and Patsy as a former beauty queen with a flair for presentation. From an early age, JonBenét stood out for her confidence, charm, and expressive personality. Friends and family recall her as energetic, affectionate, and eager to please, a child who lit up rooms with her smile. Her upbringing was comfortable and structured, filled with encouragement and opportunity. She wasn't shielded from the world, but rather guided into it with enthusiasm. Like many children, she balanced school, play, and family time, unaware that her short life would later become the center of one of the most discussed and debated criminal cases in American history. Family life behind closed doors. JonBenét was not an only child. She had an older brother, Burke Ramsey, 3 years her senior, as well as 2 adult half-siblings from her father's previous marriage. The Ramsey household in Boulder, Colorado was large, active, and often busy, reflecting a blended family navigating everyday routines. Despite public perceptions that later emerged, those close to the family described a home that valued education, manners, and shared experiences. JonBenét and Burke attended school, celebrated holidays, and lived what appeared to be a stable childhood. Like many siblings, they had different personalities. JonBenét outgoing and expressive, Burke quieter and more reserved. Their parents invested time and energy into their children's development, encouraging interests and celebrating milestones. This sense of normalcy is important to remember, because it underscores how unexpected and devastating the events of December 1996 would be, not just for the family but for an entire community. Pageants and public attention. One aspect of JonBenét's life that drew lasting attention was her participation in child beauty pageants. Introduced to the activity by her mother, JonBenét quickly showed a natural comfort on stage. She enjoyed dressing up, performing routines, and receiving applause, experiences that boosted her confidence and creativity. While pageants later became a point of controversy in public discussion, at the time they were viewed by the family as an extracurricular activity similar to dance or theater. JonBenét won several local titles, gaining recognition for her poise and enthusiasm rather than competition alone. Teachers and classmates still knew her primarily as a kindergartner, curious, playful, and eager to learn. The contrast between her innocent daily life and the highly stylized pageant images would later shape media narratives in complicated ways, often overshadowing the reality that she was first and foremost a 6-year-old child. A morning that changed everything. The morning of December 26, 1996, began as a moment of confusion and fear for the Ramsey family. What was expected to be a quiet holiday morning quickly turned into a crisis when JonBenét was discovered missing from her bed. A handwritten note found inside the home suggested a kidnapping, prompting immediate panic and a call to police. Law enforcement arrived swiftly, but the situation was already emotionally charged and unclear. Family members and friends gathered, hoping for a resolution that never came. Later that day, JonBenét was found deceased inside the home, a discovery that stunned everyone involved. The loss of a child is always tragic, but the circumstances surrounding her death added layers of disbelief and horror. In a matter of hours, a private family tragedy became a national story, setting the stage for years of investigation, speculation, and unanswered questions. Early investigation challenges. From the earliest moments, the investigation faced obstacles that would have lasting consequences. Authorities initially approached the situation as a potential kidnapping, which shaped their early decisions. As a result, the home was not fully secured as a crime scene, allowing movement that may have unintentionally disturbed evidence. In emotionally overwhelming situations, Such missteps are not uncommon, but in this case, they proved costly. Investigators later acknowledged that crucial opportunities for clarity may have been lost in those first hours. Interviews were conducted under intense pressure, and protocols that are standard in hindsight were not always followed at the time. These early challenges created gaps that would fuel doubt and debate for decades. Rather than providing clear answers, the investigation quickly became complicated, with conflicting interpretations and incomplete information, leaving both law enforcement and the public struggling to make sense of what had happened. Media attention and public judgment. As news of JonBenét's death spread, media coverage intensified rapidly. The case became a fixture on television, in newspapers, and later online, often framed through speculation rather than confirmed facts. The Ramsey family found themselves under a microscope, with their grief analyzed and their behavior scrutinized by millions of strangers. Public opinion became sharply divided, and theories multiplied, many of them unsupported or exaggerated. For a family already dealing with unimaginable loss, the relentless attention added another layer of trauma. The line between investigation and entertainment blurred, and JonBenét's story was frequently reduced to headlines rather than handled with sensitivity. This atmosphere made it difficult for truth to emerge calmly and objectively. Over time, the constant exposure shaped how the case was remembered, turning it into a cultural phenomenon rather than simply a search for justice for a child. DNA, evidence, and uncertainty. As forensic technology advanced, new testing offered both hope and frustration. DNA evidence recovered from JonBenét's clothing did not match any immediate family members, introducing the possibility of an unknown individual. While this finding shifted some assumptions, it did not provide a clear suspect or resolution. Instead, it reinforced the complexity of the case. Scientific results were interpreted differently by experts, leading to ongoing debate rather than closure. Legal decisions reflected this uncertainty, as prosecutors determined that the available evidence did not meet the standard required for charges. For the public, these developments were confusing, suggesting progress without delivering answers. For the family, they were emotionally exhausting, reopening wounds with each new announcement. The case remained officially unsolved, suspended between science, law, and public opinion, with JonBenét's name continuing to surface whenever discussions of unresolved crimes arose. Breaking years of silence. Nearly 3 decades later, Burke Ramsey chose to speak publicly, offering his perspective for the first time in many years. His decision was not framed as a revelation of hidden facts, but as a deeply personal reflection on loss, misunderstanding, and resilience. Burke described his sister with affection, remembering her energy and presence rather than the tragedy itself. He spoke openly about the emotional strain of growing up under suspicion and how it shaped his life choices. Rather than assigning blame, his comments focused on the investigation's shortcomings and the human cost of prolonged uncertainty. For many viewers, his words added a new dimension to a story long dominated by speculation. Hearing directly from someone who lived through the aftermath reminded the public that behind every headline are real people carrying pain long after attention fades. A son's defense of his parents. One of the most striking elements of Burke's statements was his defense of his parents. He acknowledged their grief, confusion, and emotional state in the immediate aftermath of JonBenét's death, emphasizing that they were not equipped to handle the storm that followed. Burke described a family overwhelmed not only by loss but by accusation, forced to navigate legal scrutiny while mourning privately. His perspective offered context rather than contradiction, reminding listeners that trauma can affect behavior in unpredictable ways. Rather than presenting them as figures of controversy, he spoke of them as parents who lost a child and spent years trying to survive the aftermath. This reframing challenged long-held narratives and encouraged a more compassionate view. It did not resolve the case, but it softened the conversation, shifting focus from blame toward understanding and empathy. Remembering JonBenét with humanity. At its core, the story of JonBenét Ramsey is not about theories or controversy. It is about a child whose life ended too soon. Over the years, her name has been repeated so often that it risks losing its humanity. Burke's voice has helped bring that humanity back into focus, reminding the world that JonBenét was a daughter, a sister, and a little girl with dreams and laughter. Justice, if it comes, should honor that truth rather than sensationalize her memory. As the case continues to exist in public consciousness, there is an opportunity to approach it with greater care, empathy, and responsibility. Nearly 3 decades later, the world may still seek answers, but it should also strive for understanding, recognizing the lasting impact of tragedy and the importance of remembering JonBenét Ramsey not as a mystery, but as a child who mattered.